Okay, let's make this happen now. We've got a lot of work ahead. Tim Jackson has been spearheading that. And so we want to talk to you about the revised sector plan. And we're very proud of how this has evolved. It's quite different. Don't be shocked. Maybe you've heard a little bit about it in bits and pieces, but it actually is coming together quite nicely. And I think you'll see how we've responded to community feedback, made significant changes, and still retained the original task force vision that we evolved over these last 4 years. Tim.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Daniel. I like to call this is a completely updated plan. Okay? It's not just a revision, it's not just little tweaks, it's completely updated that is focused on comments we've received and is focused on the goals you all have set. If you think about, we have taken advice from a lot of people over the course of the last year. We came to you several months ago, showed you some ideas of revisions and changes that we might make. You gave us some advice. I have met with county staff numerous times since we had the staff report came out and said, tell us a little more about what are you really looking for, and they've given us some clear advice. We've met with individuals, we met with small groups, and the advice was, number one, be clear, be simple. And for land planners, be simple is hard. That just means be less complex, right? But be clear, be simple, and make sure you're focused. Tell us what you really are trying to accomplish. It's too complicated, don't give us everything. So this updated application tries to live by that advice that we received. This is the revised map, the long-term master plan. I won't ask people here to look at it and tell me all the changes, okay? We're going to walk through a little bit. Again, the dark green is the new lands going into conservation. The existing lighter green here, land that we own that's already under a conservation easement. And then this is the State Route 20 Job Center. It used to be Area A. It's the State Route 20 Job Center. There's Hawthorne, there's East Gainesville, State Route 20 Job Center, Lochloosa Creek Corridor, the US 301 Job Center. Used to be Area C. That's the US 301 Job Center. It's a little more clear and simple to say State Route 20 Job Center, US 301 Job Center instead of Area A and C. There are three big summaries, three big points for this revision. They are, right, we've significantly reduced the development area, the number of acres that would be developed as urban, as employment-oriented mixed use. We have enhanced greatly the conservation protection. And third, we've confirmed the infrastructure and the finance. So I want to start with the infrastructure and finance, because the questions that we really got were we just don't know enough about what are the facilities, the water facilities, the sewer facilities, the schools, the fire, EMS, the recreation. We just don't understand enough about what they are, how big they are, when are they going to be needed, how much are they going to cost, and mostly, who's going to pay for them? How are you going to make sure taxpayers that are here today aren't the people who are paying for that? So in this revised application, there's considerable data and information about here are the kinds of water facilities that would be needed, here's how big they are, here's how much they would cost, here's when they would be needed, when are they needed before 2030, when are they needed after 2030. There's a lot of that information about each of those facilities, water, sewer, schools, parks and recreation, fire EMS particularly. And then there's great clarification to the language that says the development is going to pay for the cost of that infrastructure that it needs, not the existing taxpayers. And there's a series of white papers that explains how is that done across the state with community development districts or special assessment districts and whatever, to explain that and how that works. This is a larger project than has been done here in this county, in the past. So we need to all work together to figure out how to get it done. So on the whole idea of confirming infrastructure and finance, that's what we have done and have met with county staff and shown them the language, and we've talked through that, and I think they will find, okay, we get it. we see that. Thank you for answering that question. If we want to look at reducing the development footprint, this is the original plan of the inset. Remember, there's the whole county plan. We're going to just look at this area right here. This is the original area. This is State Route 20. This is Hawthorne, the city of Hawthorne. US 301 of the railroad track. State Route 26. This is Windsor. Campville, Grove Park. This was Area A, if you remember. Daniel, did you make these letters up? I've forgotten. Just when I got to where I could tell you where A, B, C, D, we've changed the name. We had A and B and C and D and E. Okay? So we have taken some steps. First, Area E and Area D, we have removed them from this application. Area E, you may recall, the county commission voted to ask us, would we be interested in swapping that for the fairgrounds, considering to swap it for the fairgrounds. The county fairgrounds, the existing fairgrounds is right there. It's about 100 acres, about 75 acres that could be developed. It has zoning in place for mixed use for about 700, 800,000 square feet of space. And we said, certainly we'd be happy to talk to you and consider how to swap those. So in this application, we're taking out Area E. So it just stays just like it is today. It's got a future land use designation of rural agriculture, allows 1 home to 5 acres. And we're taking out Area D here. We're taking out Area D, one, because it was certainly where we thought the last area of development would take place, that we'd move north. Secondly, we just said it'll be much simpler. We intended and we intend to build at higher densities here in the State Route 20 Job Center, here in Hawthorne, and here in the US 301 Job Center. We intended that. So let's just be clear, take that out. So we have to. The only way we can actually end up getting and using the development rights that might be granted would be to fit them all at higher densities in State Route 20, US 301, and Hawthorne. So we've taken those two out of the application. Makes it simple, clear. So the development footprint is now much smaller, and I'll show you some acres for what that is. At the same time, we've taken out the Hawthorne development from this application to the county, and we're going to submit that area to the city to annex into the city and to change the land use to the same land uses we had in this plan. You may recall Hawthorne, the city sits here, we're contiguous to the city there, we're contiguous to the city right here. And Hawthorne has, in the county plan, a reserve area, an urban reserve area that includes all of these lands. And the urban reserve area is this Hawthorne is where you ought to think about annexing in the future. So in the plan, in the county comprehensive plan, it's been anticipated, okay, that's long-term going to be urban, right? A second thing is this area has been an area that everybody said, that really does make a lot of sense. We're not really against that. And there's no reason, you all said that at the last time we met, there's no reason to force this land use to wait until we've resolved all the issues of the other application in the county. So let's pull it out, let's annex it into the city. Let's ask the city to annex it, ask the city to change the land use on that. So we're doing that. The fourth thing we've done in terms of the development footprint is we have taken the US 301 Job Center and said it cannot develop until after the year 2030. So this is the employment or mixed use that's going to be asked for approval by the county is the State Route 20 Job Center, the US 301 Job Center. The US 301 Job Center can't be developed until after 2030, so it's pretty clear. Our focus is approval of the State Route 20 Job Center, which puts jobs on State Route 20 in close proximity to East Gainesville because that's where they're going to do the most good. So this application makes it really clear, hey, our focus is doing that, okay? So that's make the development footprint smaller. The third area of update revisions was about enhanced conservation. And if you'll see here, watch the map a little bit. Watch, this is the Alachua Creek corridor as it was. This is the Alachua Creek corridor as it is now. It's about 900 acres more land there. It's darker green because it went from being conservation to being proposed to be preservation. So in this application, this corridor and a corridor that connects Pfeiffer Woods through State Route 20 Job Center to the creek would be designated preservation. So its sole use is for natural resource value. So it's for habitat, it's for wildlife, it's for water quality solely. So there will be a management plan prepared for that by the county with a county advisory committee. And the management of that land would be paid for by the development, by the owner of that land, by this development. So that's a big part of the conservation, enhanced conservation is updates to the corridor. A second thing that we've done in terms of conservation enhancement is we actually did a detailed soil survey of State Route 20 Job Center and the Hawthorne Job Center. And that soil survey was to look at, hey, how suitable is that soil really for urban development? You may remember there was concern set about that land is designated by, as poorly drained soils, right? We're concerned that it's got a lot of phosphorus in it and that developing it's going to release a lot of phosphorus into the water system. So we actually have done soil borings, had a geotechnical firm look at those borings, evaluate those borings, and reach some conclusions about, so how deep is the Hawthorne layer clay? It's at least 15 feet deep. It's not just a foot or two deep. So that developing that land with stormwater ponds will not actually require that we penetrate that Hawthorne layer. They looked at the content of phosphorus in the soil and said, okay, the phosphorus content is pretty minimal. So they have then outlined, here are the ways, the construction techniques that will be needed on that land to do it in a responsible way. So we've actually hopefully put that behind us about, yes, that soil is in fact suitable for urban development. Another piece of data we collected was on the wetlands themselves. We have field verified the wetlands in the State Route 20 Job Center. You may remember the issue was, well, the Water Management District maps wetlands, and that's the best available data, and everybody uses that. And at the comprehensive plan level, that's plenty of data. But there was real concern that, well, we think maybe the wetlands may be there may be a broader footprint of wetlands. So we've actually verified the wetlands there. And the answer is the wetland footprint's quite a bit broader than the way the Water Management District mapped it. So what you're seeing here is in fact mapped the wetlands that have been updated there. So there are several hundred more acres of wetland there than were mapped by the Water Management District. But we've updated that. So hopefully that's not a point that we'll have will be contentious. What I've talked with the county staff about is, and the county staff has actually said they want to do, let's make sure we understand what the issues are. Let's reach all the agreement we can, and let's make it clear. Here's where we either don't have agreement, or here's where the commission needs to make some big policy decisions. So we've tried to deal with that by verifying the limits of the wetlands, verifying the soils there, on the environmental, enhancing the environmental proposal that's here. So we've dealt with the infrastructure, we've dealt with the smaller footprint, and we have enhanced the conservation. And it's important to remember there is the Hawthorne Job Center, which we are continuing to advance. So we're going to advance the Hawthorne Job Center at the same time as we advance the application to the county for the sector plan. So in terms of terminology, we're calling this Envision Alachua sector plan is what's being proposed to the county. There's the EA Hawthorne comprehensive plan amendment we're proposing to the city of Hawthorne. Okay, so we're calling that the Hawthorne Job Center. So we have the State Route 20 Job Center, the Hawthorne Job Center, the US 301 Job Center, sort of as a terminology. So
Tim,
that's,
before you leave that one, Tim, also, can you point out the added conservation around Windsor? Because there's more conservation around the town of
okay,
Windsor.
this is Windsor. There's
That little
1474. This is Windsor Road, 234. And we've done two things. One, that piece of land is always what it was. It's rural today, and it stays rural. At the north end, this corner used to also be rural, and we've made that preservation. And on the south side of Windsor, this used to be rural as well, and we've actually made that conservation. This is about 100 acres right there, conservation, that abuts 1 acre parcels here and here in Windsor as a further buffer of urban development to Windsor. Thank you, Rose, for pointing that out. So if you like numbers, this tells us some numbers, right? Just to give you orders of magnitude. The original sector plan application, there were about 60,000 acres that we owned in unincorporated county that were part of that application. This application is 52,700 because we removed area E, we removed area D, and we removed the area around Hawthorne. So that's the reasons why those went down. The maximum area that could be developed inside those job centers. In the original application, it was just over 7,600. In this application, the maximum is 3,380. Okay, so it's less than half the number of acres to be developed. However, almost all of the program, the original program, the 15.5 million square feet, the 10,500 homes, almost all of that fits into the 3 job centers. It's about 10% less. So the total program is about 14.2 million square feet of non-residential instead of 15.5, and 9,500 homes instead of 10,500 homes.
And it still accommodates 30,000 jobs.
So, right, and the number of jobs is 30,000.
Still 30,000.
Just over 30,000 jobs. And these show you some of the numbers. The existing conservation is still in the plan. That's under existing conservation easement. And the new conservation easement land in the original plan were about 2,300. That's down about 23,000, down about 900 acres, but 3,500 of that is preservation instead of not just conservation. So those are acres. So now, if we want to look at what it might look like on the ground, this is the State Route 20 Job Center, an idea of what it might look. It's something that we've not seen before. There is State Route 20. There is 234 into Windsor, which sits right up here. This is Grove Park. The creek is right there. So this is an idea of how that mixed-use job center might sit on that land. There is that preservation corridor as it's mapped through here. This would be that job center. There's Jack Payne's office right there.
Yep.
I think. Right. There's the Shands facility right here, whatever. So that's an idea what it might look like. Here's what it might look like in bird's eye view of the very center. Right, Daniel?
Click. Oh, there should be a square there.
Yeah.
Went away.
Oh, well. It's a picture of, it's looking at this center there,
Yeah,
what that might look like from a bird's eye view. Those are, with the plazas, you can get the feel of the scale, perhaps at most, 4 to 7 story buildings. It's a mixture of residential, of R&D, of campus institutions, of retail on the floor. Very, very connected community, and there might be a more ground level view of people experiencing that. So that might be an example of what the State Route 20 Job Center would look like. It's very focused on research and development. It's all of I'd like to say it's all the millennials who want to get together and collide. That's what we've learned in planning school anyway. EA Hawthorne, here is the city of Hawthorne. There's the railroad track. There's 301. This is State Route 20. This is the trail. If you're in Hawthorne, this is the Hawthorne-Gainesville Trail, right? If you're in, right, David? Right. Mm-hmm. If you're in Gainesville, that's the Gainesville-Hawthorne Trail. But people in Hawthorne, that's the Hawthorne Trail. Just anyway. So here's an example of what this might look like. There is the large-scale advanced manufacturing along the railroad track, served by railroad. That's a concept of a railroad connection. There's residential. As you can see right here, about 8, perhaps 600 homes down here. Here, about 3 million square feet of non-residential. Just as a view of what that might look like. There's another view of that from the south, just similar sort of view. Pretty exciting, coming to life. It's a lot easier to understand what this might be with those pictures than just the colors on the map.
Before you go on to that, Tim, let's pause briefly and see if there's any questions, comments on how this has evolved. What do you think about it? We did want to get some discussion, some feedback. How does that live up to the original task force vision in your mind? I remember Justin Williams, he's not here tonight, but he coined the term the corner strategy, and it seems like we're sticking to that idea, the corners, and trying to leave as much of the interior intact. And Tim spoke of the enhanced preservation, enhanced conservation, the expanded acreage there. What are some of your thoughts here? Rob, did you have a comment?
Yeah, the one thing I think I particularly like, frankly, is annexing into the city of Hawthorne and getting moving there. I've always been an advocate of the idea that this project should start in Hawthorne. I think that was always pretty well recognized. This basically just expedites that. The other thing, of course, is I always like more buffer. You had a huge buffer before by any standard in any regulation in the state, but it got bigger. Would you clarify the differences between preservation and conservation? Okay. Especially as far as Plum Creek operations would be concerned.
Okay. As far as Plum Creek operations, preservation would be managed solely for its resource value. So there'd be a management plan put together. So it would not continue to be forested unless that was part of the management plan. So if perhaps there's some
for restoration.
For restoration purposes, right? Whereas whereas these lands would be in conservation, EA conservation, and they'd continue to be forested, right? They would take off the ability to do 1 home to 5 acres, take off the ability to do intense ag, but continue silviculture operations on those. Now we're talking about, we have discussed with the county staff our plan to put in place alternative practices on that land that match what the water management, how the water management district manages its conservation easements. And we've got to figure out a way to put those in place because they really can't go into the comprehensive plan. So we have said we will put those into a deed restriction that we voluntarily put in place that is an enforceable deed restriction.
And if I may, while you have this map up, because this actually reminded me of another thing. The other thing I like about this is we're basically concentrating all of the development from a point not north of Noonan's Lake, roughly. That's south of 26.
Right, that's absolutely.
And the thing I like about that is, you know, certainly there are concerns about Lackalusa Creek and Lackalusa Lake and the chain of lakes downstream from that. But there's another water body in this whole region of Florida that's actually already severely impacted, and that's the Santa Fe River. And what I like about this is it basically is moving development further away from the Santa Fe River, out of the Santa Fe River watershed. Mm-hmm. And, you know, to me, that is the body of water in Alachua County that is sick. So I'm glad to see that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Rob.
Okay. Other comments, questions? Dorothy?
That little buffer that you put there at the top of the extra little buffer that's right there between Highway 1474 and the first green as you go toward 20, down, right there. That there butts right up to the people that are the most vocally against Plum Creek, which is nice because that might satisfy them.
Okay. Will you go talk to him?
Todd would like their name and phone number.
Yeah. No, I like that feature too, because it really, we've talked a lot about the rural character, and it definitely enhances that and pushes, you know, and even what's on the other side of it is a relatively lower intensity character, so it should fit more, be more compatible as well. Good, thank you. John?
I just wanted to comment on the addition of the preservation area in this Lachleusa corridor, to the dismay of our foresters that work for the company. A lot of that is actually you know, pine plantation that we are managing pretty intensively at the moment, and that will be taken out. I think you said that, but just to point it out. Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Okay. Steve?
Tim, this is, I mean, I think this is an improved plan. What's been the response so far? You've talked to a lot of stakeholders. You've answered a lot of questions, particularly, I think, from the environmental community perspective. What's been the response so far?
Well, first, we haven't shown it to very many people.
Okay.
Okay. We wanted the task force to see this. If you remember, the last time we met, we talked about some of these options. We said, you know, we're thinking about taking these areas out. We're thinking about doing this, and you gave us some guidance and advice. So we've been pretty hesitant to show it to very many people. When we show it to people, it is, well, that is clear, that is, you know, simpler, we understand it more, and we'll look forward to evaluating it. So the few people we've shown that to.
In all fairness, we did let the city of Hawthorne take a peek at their chamber meeting last week, so.
Right, but we focused on Hawthorne as opposed to the rest of the county plan. We told in Hawthorne that we had made a decision to propose it into the city of Hawthorne.
Right, last week.
What was their reaction? They're here.
Excellent. Other feedback, questions, comments? Susan?
I just have one real quick question. Because I see that the numbers have decreased significantly, almost by half of the developable areas. And is part of that, one, you took some out, but number two, because of the annexation of that other area into Hawthorne?
Yes.
Because I'm thinking those numbers really just seem so drastic, but I guess that would answer that question. So that's how that.
So the numbers, the 30, well, let me go back to this.
Yeah.
The
Right,
3380 is in the county.
Okay.
You have to add that to the 809 that's in Hawthorne, so you get 4189,
It's still 3,000 less.
right, which is
Yeah, that's still significantly
about
less.
3,500 acres less,
Right.
because we took out Area D, we took out Area E. So in terms
It's not
of
just because of Hawthorne.
Right,
It's because of
okay.
D&E being removed.
Okay, well, I wanted to make sure that, you know, there wasn't confusion in
Right.
exactly where, because I did see that drastic reduction. I'm thinking, how can you reduce it by almost half? Well, you did actually, almost by, I would say, gosh, it almost seems like a 40% or so. But that's a significant amount. But it's always, as I think you've come to the conclusion, it's better to start a little bit smaller and, like you said, focus and a little bit more aligned with what is higher probability of success factor, you know, with some of those numbers. And, you know, I thought it was great before. Now it's like incredible. And again, I just hope you don't have any type of resistance to something that's now so strong.
I think, Susan, that in the previous plan, we took the approach to include these lands in because we weren't really sure where would be the market demand, and then so that we'd have flexibility. We always intended, though, to start here on the south and move north.
Right.
And so with a reflection to, well, how do you make it simple? Well, let's just say this is where we believe we need to be, and let's do that. And let's take that land out. So that's why we did that. The original plan had in it an anticipation of the densities that would get us almost everything into these areas anyway.
Right.
So that if any development that happened up along in Area D would be lower density, or it would be snuggle on the roadway. So we just took that out. So it's not like, right, it's not like it was overreaching, a plan overreaching. It was about enough flexibility that we could deal with all the options in the future. And now we're saying, let's take those options away, which reduces the risk, right, of, hey, development's going to come here, development's going to come there. Because that really was one of the concerns that county staff had, was, you know, in here you have flexibility, and the first thing you could do might be to go put jobs all the way up there. You might do that, and we just have clarified it and made it much simpler now.
Well, right, but I mean, that was extreme in that you took it off completely, whereas before it would have been part 1, part 2, part 3, or first phase, second phase, third phase. But one of the other things that I've seen that happen with a lot of developments is that when you become so strict in terms of your land use, and you put so much in, either green space or, unbuildable, well, the buildable part becomes so much more expensive, then you start having other problems, that it's not affordable, or it just becomes, the numbers just get harder to make work, and that's where we see density becoming so thick and so strong in certain developments that also is not as great either in the other side. Too much density, and that's why I'm a little concerned about letting go of so much for possible future expansion, because now you're only talking about, I think my numbers came out with 6% of the actual land use of the 52,000 versus the 7.6 was about 13%.
Right, but we feel very comfortable that the program that's got 30,000 jobs in it fits on this in products that are marketable to the folks over the next 50 years. We feel very comfortable with that, and it being a very high quality place to live, and a place that has a big diversity in the sizes of homes and the kinds of jobs to do all those things. So it's one full community. It's not just focused on one demographic or one kind of job.
But that's still an important parameter to highlight the need for future expansion, because you never want to be boxing yourself in. So it's a very good comment. Other thoughts or reactions here? Yeah, I guess, Jack, when are you moving your office in? You said, are you getting ready for that?
Well, I thought it was going to be on the water, Tim. But no, seriously though, I haven't been to a number of meetings, and it's great to be back, and the quality of the presentations tonight is typical. They've all been wonderful. I'm really impressed with the plan. My responsibilities at the university are all the agricultural programs and the natural resource programs. And I come to academia with a background in ecology, so when I get a job like I do, it scares the hell out of the Farm Bureau until they know who I am, because they don't know if I'm from Greenpeace or Earth First. But but I was impressed with the first plan. I thought, given the status quo, it was a really good plan. This is even stronger on the conservation side, so congratulations. I think it's really well done.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, other thoughts here. Let's go to schedule, Tim, and bring you up to date on that. There's a lot more to take place here, and these are the major milestone points.
So this might be a potential schedule for the sector plan application to the county. So if we submit here by the end of June, we don't have very many days left, but we think this coming Thursday we'll submit this to the county. Several months of the county staff reviewing, of the county staff and we meeting to answer questions, resolve issues, as many as we can. The idea that there might be hearings, a first set of hearings in this time period between September and November, and that would result in the county commission voting to transmit the comprehensive plan amendment to the State Department of Economic Opportunity, who would then review, and it would come back for final hearing for the Board of County Commissioners. We think somewhere in the February to April, May time period of 2016. We would intend to have a task force meeting before then, after this whole series of hearings. And then, presuming there is a positive vote February to April, that in fall time period we'd be submitting a detailed specific area plan or master zoning plan for the first area. So that's a potential application schedule in the county. In the city of Hawthorne, there would be an application for annexation and an application to amend the land use plan again, that application going in the end of this week. We think perhaps because it's less land, there's less complication, that the hearings could probably be held in the September, October timeframe, come back for final hearings before the end of the year. So it could be that, in fact, there's a final public hearings that annex the property, change the land use before the first of the year, and then submitting zoning application in early January for the first piece of that, probably the job center along the railroad tracks, perhaps several hundred acres there for zoning of that piece of land. So you can see that application could move forward fairly quickly. It's probably advanced by a year or a year and a half, 2 years even, over the sector plan of the county, which is just much more complicated, just definitely just going to take more time for deliberation. So that's how we see the schedules. Daniel always puts subject to change with a big exclamation point.
Yeah.
Nobody's keeping track of all the if somebody went back to the original schedule from Todd's 3 years and 11 months ago, I hope they're not keeping track. So
11 months, 3
I
weeks.
think you produced that first one.
I know. I didn't work for you then. It couldn't have been me.
Okay, any further questions or comments, suggestions, or ideas here?
I just wanted to note
Rob?
that for people who aren't perhaps always thinking of the next election, the final vote on the comp plan would come approaching or in or immediately after the 2016 county elections, which means this will continue to be a political issue. So isn't that what you said in your?
The schedule shows hopefully a final vote in April of 2016
For the
sector plan.
For the submittal.
No, for the sector plan. That's the final public hearing on the ESP, February to April of 2016. So that might be when.
All right,
So it.
I see, I was fooled by the bottom line there.
Sorry, yeah,
Okay.
the bottom line is about a zoning application.
I am glad to hear that because.
You have me scared for a minute, Bob.
Yes,
Okay.
well.
Yeah. Okay, good clarification, thank you. Okay, anything else?